All right, thank you all for joining us. My name is Heather Knoll, and I am the program coordinator at Sustainable Woodstock. Founded in 2009, Sustainable Woodstock is a not-for-profit community and environmental action and education organization. And we exist to lead our communities through the climate emergency, empowering Woodstock and the rest of the Upper Valley to meet climate commitments and live sustainably through advocacy, education, and collaboration. And this event is a part of our Green Drink series. Green Drinks are social events to connect people and organizations who have similar interests in sustainability and climate change. And our next event will be on March 7th. We will be touring Ferndean Farm, a hydroponics farm in Woodstock. So I hope some of you will join us for that. Now, before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to talk about our format for the evening. We are starting with a presentation, and it will be followed by time for questions at the end. And we will be taking questions in the chat. You can enter questions at any time. And to enter questions, type them into the chat box at the side of your screen. And if you don't see that chat box, click on the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and it should open up. And if you have comments to share, let's keep them constructive so that we can have a productive conversation tonight. Now I'm going to turn us over to our speakers. Seth Webb is from the Mountain View School Board. We also have Megan Landis of the Rebuild Group and Joe Rigoli, the Facilities Director. Thank you all for joining us.
And Carrie Bristow, the chair of the school board.
Welcome, Carrie. Thank you.
Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Carrie, Joe?
Sure. My name is Joe Rigoli, and I'm the facilities director for Mountain View Supervisory Union.
And my name is Carrie Bristow. I was a longtime teacher in the middle school, high school, and then came back as a board member just after the second year of the pandemic.
And my name is Seth Webb. I'm a board member, the chair of the Rebuild Group, 16-year resident of Woodstock. My background is I spent about 30 years in state and local government. I was a town manager of Killington, special assistant to the governor of Illinois, planning advisor to a mayor in Guatemala, and the director of events for New York City Parks. And I currently help companies that want to work with state and local government. Anyway, we're here. I think the agenda for tonight is Megan on the phone or Sam?
Sam is, but he says he has a cold and he would defer to us.
So there's a couple of folks. One of the things that we did when we started relooking at this issue of the school was we appointed a committee of residents from the 7 towns in the district. Sam Stockwell is a member and a communications pro. He also is an alumni of the school, and he's now a parent raising children here. And Megan Landis is also on the committee. She is a representative from Woodstock, and she's an architect and was really helpful in reviewing the design and looking at where we can find efficiencies and cuts. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're here and why we're looking at this vote again. I'm trying to see. It looks like we have people from all over Woodstock and maybe some in the district too. Anybody from outside of Woodstock here? How many people from Woodstock? Raise your hand. Or in the chat. Just trying to get a sense of who we're talking to. It's weird with not being able to see faces. I'll look for any comments in the chat. Anyway, so why are we voting on the rebuild again? A couple of things have changed since 2024. One, the building condition has gotten worse. We were at the time the second worst building in the state. Burlington has since passed a bond. It was the worst building in the state, and now we're the worst, unfortunately. And the cost for repair has gone up, and the cost for construction has gone up. So that's bad. State aid is now been on the horizon as a part of Vermont education reform. they restarted the school construction fund, and legislation and guidance from the state board of education says that the school construction fund will fund 20 to 40%, maybe up to 50% in some cases, of eligible school construction. So that was good. And the other thing is we already have a pre-approval for that program. We got a pre-approval in 2024 or 2023, just before the vote, and we were able to confirm in September that our pre-approval is still valid. So as we came together to look at this problem and address taxpayers' number one point of feedback from 2024, which was cost, we were encouraged by potentially partnering with the state. Number three, what has changed is redistricting. You may be following this, but the state is looking to combine districts, make the administrative functions, consolidate those administrative functions. So just to be clear, the legislation says, let's look to see how we can consolidate the superintendents, their staff, and some of the functions that go to manage schools. It is not about school consolidation yet in terms of facilities. Facilities are only voluntary. So those are some of the new things that have changed. When I was on the sideline. I'm a parent of two. I've got a 7-year-old at West and an aspiring West student. And I was disappointed, when the last bond didn't pass, but I understood about the affordability issue. And I started writing some stuff in the paper last year saying, this is what we should do. This is what we should do. And then I got a call from the school board and they said, hey, do you want to be on the school board? There's a guy that doesn't come to meetings. Maybe you could help us out. And I said, okay. And then they said, would you like to run the rebuild committee? It was like, okay, so here's the job we have. And so when I got that job, I said, well, the number one thing that people want is to reduce costs, but we need to address this issue really quick. And so we really have three bad choices that we were facing. And the school board and the rebuild group has really worked to answer all of those questions. Pick the best option of the three bad choices. And the three bad choices were, we have an expensive rebuild with rising costs. We have equally or more expensive repairs and certainly or renovations and more disruptive. And we're not even sure if that's possible. And I'll let Joe talk about it. And then we could do nothing and risk losing the school to redistricting. So those were bad choices, and we've come to grapple. And I'll tell you how we came up with a solution. But I want to add a little detail to this real quick about the building. What else has changed since the 2024 vote, Carrie and Joe, about the building?
Literally and quite simply, it's a 70-year-old building and that's end of its lifespan. And I'll use the analogy of a zombie and parts of the body falling off one at a time. And that's what we're encountering now. I wake up every morning wondering what's the next system or issue we're going to have, and will I be able to open the doors? It's been quite trying, especially over these past few weeks with these cold temps. We've had some failures. So at the end of the day, it is not time for repair. It is time for replace. I think that's the best analogy I could give.
Joe, can you just give some of the prime examples of the things that are failing or have failed over the last, let's say 5 years, because it didn't just start 2 years ago. It started a long time ago. Especially, having taught in that school since 1980, it wasn't in very good shape in 1980. And although we could all sit here and blame everybody who didn't take care of it, that's not going to change anything, because a lot of those people are long gone from here. So could you just say a few of the things that, you've had to deal with in the last few years?
Certainly. I think the first thing I want to say is hats off to the people that came before me, because this building is 70 years old, like I said, and the doors are still open. I mean, building systems are meant to last 30, 40 years. And that's electrical, plumbing, that type of stuff. I've been with the district for about 8 years. And I think over the past 5 years, I've invested probably close to $3 million into Woodstock Union High School just to keep the doors open. The repairs that I'm making are urgent repairs. For instance, the steam system. When I first got there, again, the building was built in 1958. The technology is completely different. You can imagine what it is today versus 1958. And one of those issues that we had was the high school portion of the building was heated by steam. Uh, Over the years, it doesn't necessarily matter, but just the hard water and the conditioners that were added to the water in steam systems, they're heated and then it turns into steam that's pushed through, but they were pushed through cast iron pipes. And over 70 years, those pipes wear out. And the infrastructure for that steam system was located underneath the building, running through tunnels. It started to develop leaks and it wasn't very efficient and it was very expensive. We were burning probably over 50 gallons an hour of home heating oil and it started to get cost prohibitive. So we switched over and converted the high school portion of the building from a steam heating system to a hot water heating system, which, a majority of your homes are heated with hot water. That project alone cost us 1.3 million. We're experiencing also deterioration of waste lines in the building. This is the piping that carries all the waste out of the building, effluent and that type of stuff. Again, cast iron pipes over the years wear and they become oxidized and break apart. We're at that point now where I'm starting to lose waste lines, so we're unable to push out all the waste from the building. We're having a project that's hopefully going to be completed by the end of the summer here that'll cost us around $300,000 just to replace around 200 feet of waistline that is exiting the cafeteria out to the Route 4 lift station that we have. Again, a lot of the infrastructure is underneath the building, encased in concrete, or in the walls encased in concrete. So as we have these failures, it's extremely difficult and disrupting to the students and faculty because we're literally hacking open walls, trying to locate leaks. I can continue and go on, but
Yeah.
as I said, it's a 70-year-old building at the end of its lifespan.
So I just wanted to give a little bit of color to the building situation. When we started the rebuild group, we started looking back at all of the reports that have been done about the facility since around 2016, 17. There's been countless reports from engineers, architects, and regulators about the failing or bad condition of the facility and its equipment. And so we started there and we started looking at it. And the first conclusion we came to was what I think 6 or 7 boards, your elected officials, have come to in the past, which is it would be more costly and disruptive to repair or renovate and then rebuild. And part of the reason now is because we cannot get state aid for any repair or renovation. Since the building was determined to be, I think, 96% depreciated by the state, we would not be eligible for state aid. So that was one reason. So then let's talk about the solution that we came to. We essentially have come to a solution that would reduce the cost, the local share of the bond cost by $15 million from 2024 by doing 3 things. One, we're going to make the district voters responsible for 75% of the bond cost because we're going to pursue a shared model of local share, 75%, and then 25% from state, federal, or private sources. So we've had 13% inflation since 2024. But if we take 25% off of the final cost, the updated cost of the building, that brings us down well below what we considered in 2020 2024. So the second thing we did, so the first thing we did was let's look at working with a mixed funding solution where we only fund 75% of the cost. The second way to control cost was to make cuts. The 2024 plan, we looked at it very carefully. We said if there's nice to haves, the community clearly can't afford this. Let's see where we can cut. We made some reductions. We took the gabled roofs, made them flat roofs. We squared off the facade. We reduced the number of windows. We are reusing furniture. We're doing everything that we could around the building to bring down the cost, and we ended up cutting around $1 million of cost out of that. A lot of the cost for the building is driven by the square footage. The current square footage of the building is 139,000. That building that was built in 1958 has housed up to 700 students in like the early 2000s. The current population is around 450 students, but the classroom size of the current building is around 500 to 700 square feet per classroom. The state requirements for new classroom sizes are 750. So there's some upsizing that had to happen in the new building from the old building to meet state requirements. That's the one thing that drove. There's two things that drove the square footage of the new building, and they're both. The first one is the state requirements for classroom size. The second one is what we're doing in that building. How the building was designed in 1958 is very different than how education works in 2026. So there's a lot of things that happen in the school that did not happen in the school in 1958 that we had to design for and accommodate. This ranges from mental health services to social services to different programming, et cetera. And so, we made all the cuts that we could to bring the cost down, but we still had some things that were driving us up. And then we also had 13% inflation, because I think every year the community has looked at this. I'm certainly not the first person to be in a committee like this looking at this problem, and the costs keep rising. And with tariffs and inflation, the cost went up 13% since the last vote. So our cost control measures are: one, mixed funding solution where we do a 75% local share, 25% from state, federal, and private sources. Number two, make some cuts to the existing design, but retain our pre-approval so that we can get it state aid, and that we did. And then number three, we have to pass legislation to eliminate a penalty that we're currently facing for taking on any capital debt. This is probably why nothing happened last year. Not because the building issue wasn't urgent, but because the state legislature put a penalty in place at the end of the 2024 legislative session that combined the per pupil spend with the capital spend. The effect for us is that any debt you take on for a capital project ends up being penalized twice. So you're paying 2x for any capital debt. We have advocated very strongly to eliminate that, and we have gotten great support thanks to State Representative Kimball and State Senator Allison Clarkson. They have introduced bills in the legislature that have picked up support from around Vermont, and we're cautiously optimistic that those go through. So those are the three main cost reduction strategies. What are we left with? We're left with a proposal that costs around $84 million for the local share of the bond, and I'm going to show you some specifics here and how that comes to life on a ballot question. Can I share my screen here?
You should be able to, yes.
There it is. So this is Article 4 will authorize the district to borrow up to $111 million for the final design and construction of a new building, sports facilities campus, as well as demolition of the current building, only if two criteria are met. So the cost went up, even though we cut $1 million out of the cost from 99 million, the cost still went up 13. And that's how, taking that million off, that's how you get to the 111.9. Now, the way we bring it down to 84 is we add 2 cost containment contingencies to the vote. One, we have to secure 25% of the cost from external sources before we issue the debt. And number 2, the legislature has to eliminate the current double penalty before the debt. So those are 2 cost contingency strategies. With those and the 1 million in cuts we made, we reduced the local share of the bond to 84 million. So just to be clear, even if everybody votes yes, and there's 7,200 voters in the district, even if the project gets a yes vote, we can't proceed with it until we get 28 million in outside funding to offset costs, and until the legislature until the legislature passes this decoupling legislation. So they're written into the ballot question to protect taxpayers and contain cost. The rebuild will not happen unless those 2 criteria are met. And so a lot of people are saying, well, why is it 111,000 or 111 million? Well, it's because you didn't read the rest of the question, which is complex, and it's our communications challenge. So I really appreciate you guys being here today to listen to this, because it's not obvious when you first read it. That was the way. And so the question comes up, well, why don't we just bond for 84 million and get the rest from the state and private sources? The answer is that's not how the funding works, unfortunately. In order to be eligible for state funding, you have to have a pre-approval, and you have to have a successful bond vote for the entirety of the project, and they fund on a reimbursement. But because we've made these contingencies, we cannot proceed until we get certification of getting that type of funding. The other thing that we've been doing is we've started a private fundraising effort. We've gotten about $2.5 million in pledges from some very initial efforts, and I expect that to grow over the coming weeks. And I expect that to help further offset. I expect that to grow, and I've been encouraged by the positive response and the generosity we've gotten. So that's another thing that we're doing, private fundraising to offset costs. Any questions on the actual bond, on the language, before we keep talking? And anything I missed, Carrie or Joe?
I'll just add, if anyone has any questions, you can put them into the chat. And if you're not seeing the chat on the side of your screen, click the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom screen.
Doesn't look like we have any questions, so I'll keep going. So why is the school needed? Why is a new school needed? Wouldn't a renovation be cheaper? I think we covered that, which is, we're offering, first of all, we've determined that a renovation would not be possible in some cases, and more expensive and disruptive. There's been countless studies that have indicated that, and we've been paying in Band-Aid fixes millions of dollars over the last couple of years. Number 2, we won't be eligible for state aid for any repairs. We have made this, we have redesigned, won't this be too extravagant? We have designed this as a public school with public school dollars. I'm going to take John Spector's question just to be very clear. The cost for this building, if you compare the square footage cost, we're $100 per square foot lower, over $100 lower than what Burlington, the first high school to be built new in Vermont in the last few years, has done. Number 2, if you look at Barry, which had a failed bond vote this last fall, we're about $200 less a square foot than what they proposed. And then if you look at comparable schools in Massachusetts, we're $300 to $400 underneath that. So our cost per square foot is significantly lower than the others that you would compare. Yes, John Spector.
Seth, thanks and everybody, thanks for this. This is really helpful. I just looking for arguments, quantitative arguments to talk about the size of the school. And you mentioned the requirement to go from an average of, let's say, 600 to 750. That's a 25% increase in classroom size on average. Is that right to conclude that? That's required by the state.
Yes, the classroom, the increase in classroom size, the building is going from 139 thousand square feet to 100, a little under about 158,000 square feet, and the increase in size is due to two factors: state requirements for classroom size and the changing nature of education from 1958 to 2026.
And of the how much of the total space is classrooms, like, or how much of that increase is due to the increase, the requirement for larger classrooms?
Well, the school is primarily classrooms. So I don't know the actual answer to that. I can show you a picture of the facility, but I can get back to you on the exact specifics.
Okay. Well, the reason is to be able to say, look, from a we're required in order to have a school that's the same size as ours, we're required to increase the size from 139 to 152, and we're building a school that's 158. So we're adding 6,000 square feet. We're adding 4% to the size. The school is functional, is from a regulatory point of view 4% bigger than what it is now, and we're doing that because we hope to grow the population. Whatever. It's a very modest increase as opposed to we're building a giant school. Why don't we just make it smaller? In other words, it's very comparable to. It sounds like it could be. The numbers could show that it's very comparable to what ours is, which is a legal school. In other words, one that
you're absolutely right, and we will work to make that argument. There is one factor that I left out: the regulatory requirements. So we don't currently meet fire code or building code or all the safety codes, and so there was some upsizing required in meeting code, all the various regulatory codes. So it's not just classroom size; it's meeting code, and then it's facilitating the different functions. Joe, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to speak briefly to the renovation portion of it. I want folks to be aware that we would not be able to renovate the middle school portion of the building because of its construction method. It is constructed out of pretensioned concrete planking. It currently does not meet seismic code, and if we were to perforate any of those planks that that portion of the building is assembled out of, we would ruin its integrity, and we just wouldn't be able to do it. So, in a nutshell, the only kind of improvements we'd be able to make to the middle school portion of the building would be purely cosmetic, windows, carpeting, that type of stuff.
I wanted to make sure you saw in the chat there are two questions. The first, are your costs realistic? Is the first one.
Yeah, I think I have addressed that by, well, first of all, a couple of things. One, we raised about $30,000 in private funds to rehire the architect and a third-party costing firm to ensure that we had accurate costs and we had talent to be able to make cuts to the school in a way that complied with our pre-approval. So having those experts on board that were funded by private dollars over the fall and still now helped ensure that the costs are realistic and based on real market values. That's where I got the 13% inflation number from. And I think the comparison to the other schools in the region shows that we did it, that we're in the same category, but we're at the bottom. How many students will the school serve? This is Sue's question, which I want to answer. How many students? By the way, I could only see Ginevra's question to me, and now I'm seeing all these people from Calgary to Killington are here. So welcome. Thanks for coming.
Beth, I'll be glad to take that question if you want.
Oh, sure. Well, the current, we designed, part of the strategy was like, let's design what we can accommodate. Let's design it for what we have now. our current population with a little bit of room for growth, because we know redistricting is coming, and we've actually seen some positive movements on that today, which I'm sure we can talk about. But then we have expansion plans potentially for 750 students if we want to go up from 600 to 750 students that could be easily exercised within our Act 250 permit. So they're already pre-designed and they could be exercised if redistricting happens. And if the state wants to take this to 1,000, there are other modifications we could make prior to going to construction that would facilitate that option in the future. So I hope that helps. Carrie, what did I leave out? I'm sorry to
No, and I
jump around.
think that this is exactly what I was going to say.
But yeah, it was like really a phased approach. And Tom, I'm going to get to the net. We'll get to the net zero question shortly. I want to go through a couple more things real quick, just to make sure that we hit all the points. We have I want to make you aware of a couple of things. First of all, we have a website where you can find all this information. I'm going to put this in the chat here, and I'll share my screen briefly to make sure that folks know about this. But we have all the information that we've assembled, including a letter to the community, which everybody should read when they can. This really gives a discussion about why a rebuild is needed, what are the cost containment strategies, and how are they written into the ballot initiative. Here's sort of the budget that I went over and talked through. Some other the points that we talked about on cost containment around the design that we just discussed, and then what happens if the school bond doesn't pass. And this is really important. I want to talk about what a yes vote means and what a no vote means. And so if the bond doesn't pass, the community is going to need to consider some more expensive options and face an increased threat of losing the school ultimately. We won't be eligible for state aid if we don't pass a bond, because you have to have a pre-approved plan and pass your portion of the bond. And we don't qualify for aid for repairs. There's $2.5 million in private money, and we expect that to increase, especially before the vote, that we won't be able to take advantage of because those pledges are contingent on passing a bond vote. We're going to have to, or whoever's on the board, is going to have to consider bringing a new plan, either a more expensive plan or revoting this plan in November. And then we run the risk of losing the school depending on how redistricting proceeds. And I want to talk about that. If the governor's pretty serious and the legislature seems to be supporting him in terms of thinking about consolidating the administrative functions of districts. Right now, we are in a district with 1,000 students. What they're talking about is making districts of 4,000 to 5,000 students. That means that we would lose our school board. We would be part of a larger district. We would have a smaller seat at the table. We would be competing for funds with more communities, et cetera, et cetera. Now, because Vermont has equalized education funding, that means that, I was a town manager. 70% of your taxes are going to go to Montpelier, and you're going to get a 50 or 40% back. That's how it works. Especially in a town like Killington or a town like Woodstock, many of these towns that are called sending towns, where we send more money than we get back from Montpelier. And you're going to be, it's not like the town is not going to have to pay for a school. We're always going to have to pay for a school. The question is, do we want to pay 75% and have a new school in our community, or do we want to roll the dice and try our chances with redistricting, drive a half hour or 45 minutes, two ways, twice a day, and pay 100%, and I don't know that's a great option. I don't want us to be a community without a school, without a heartbeat, without our second largest employer, without a source of major economic impact, without something that sustains our property values. I think we lose folks, and it really changes the character of the place. I think, right now the state has said we want to change education funding. We want to change the governance. The way that you do that is by you have regional hubs. They see us as a regional hub. We're serving 28 communities right now. We have 7 towns in our district, and we have sending students from 28. We have students from 28 communities through those towns and the sending communities. And the Senate Education Committee spent the day with us in November. They're the top policymakers in the state, and they said, we don't want to break this district apart. We want to see more districts doing things just like you're doing. They said that the literacy scores are in the toilet for the rest of Vermont and the rest of New England. You guys are an exception. The engagement at the student level here is impressive. Yes, and you should pursue the school construction fund. We're going to put some money in it. It's not going to be that much money, but you should do it. That's how we're structuring this this reform, where there's shared costs between the state and the local communities. So those seem to be sort of our choices. I will talk a little bit about school construction funding, but any questions on the things I said, or Joe or Carrie, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple of comments to that. I happened to be with one of the ed policy persons today at a UVM class that I made a presentation about around language learning. And he asked me directly, he said, "Oh, we all know about Woodstock and your plight up there." And we came up yesterday in a meeting about construction funding. And he said, "Why don't you just wait?" And I said, "We can't wait. Every day, a disaster could happen that would prevent us from educating our students in that building. And the more money we sink into it, the more, the burden on the taxpayer." And so he acknowledged that. And I said, "So we're just moving forward and, hoping that we'll get the bond vote, because if not, we lose a school. There's no way we can renovate it with the amount of costs, as we have a report from 2024 on the costs of those renovations, and there's no way the state will help us with that due to its numbers of depletion. And so, we either get a new school or we lose our school. And if we lose our school, our high school, middle school, what happens to the rest of the communities? What's going to happen here? An encouraging sign today was that Peter Conlon's, who's the head of the House Education Committee, proposed they drop the number from 4,000 to 8,000 down to 2 to 4,000 districts. He put out a new map, which has yet to be discussed by all the different people who have voices on this, but it left our district intact. It didn't add anyone, it didn't take away anyone. So having seen that at the end of the day today, I find that quite encouraging that that we may stay together as a district, which is what we've asked for. And it's possible that other communities around us who have approached us regarding sending their high school students to us, as our neighbors around us. I don't want to say who it is because they haven't really made it public yet, but 2 towns have reached out and said, "We'd really like to come to your middle school, high schools." So I think there is some hope here, more so today than yesterday, perhaps.
And some people have said, "Hey, why they haven't funded school construction yet, so why do this now?" And our answer is, one, we have a pre-approval, so we're halfway there. 2, this is the most affordable option for the community to do this split. 3, the legislators have told us that they intend to put some money into this year, and so we want to be at the first of the line when it comes online. The Agency of Education has said they plan to open the school construction fund in July of this year. Now, they'll still have to do a rulemaking to finalize how it all works, but we're following all the guidance that's available now. And the other good news is that we've heard from our delegation and other in the leadership in Montpelier that there's 3 funding sources under consideration. 1, the governor has talked about an estate tax. 2, there is significant movement on increasing taxes on second homeowners. 3, there's a proposal for a wealth tax. And those are all three things that have been floated as funding ideas. I know that the Senate Education Committee indicated when they were here that they had other ideas, but that was heartening too. So, it may take, if we pass our portion of the bond here, it may take, at the earliest, say we pass 75% now and we're able to secure the 28 million this year through state and private sources. We could bid the project out next year, start construction in 27, have students in the building by 29. The current building would be used during construction. We would keep it on life support, and then it would be demolished when the students go into the new school in 29. Now, that is the we all know how construction goes, and we know how like these big projects goes. That's the fastest it'll ever move, but we want to have that option if we can, and we didn't want to wait. Act 250. You want to talk about Act 250, Joe?
Yeah, so we've started that process of Act 250, and our engineers have assured us that the remaining application that we have to move forward on should be pretty straightforward. We've already engaged with them, and we've gotten some pre-approval. So I don't think Act 250 would be an issue. And to speak quickly to Tom Ayers' question, how we are going to have the new build be net zero. Our HVAC system, the building will be 100% electric. Our HVAC system is going to be a hybrid system of geothermal and water-sourced heat pumps. And we'll be offsetting all of that energy through solar arrays. We currently have a lot of space on a roof, and we're engaging with folks right now to determine where we might be able to access additional solar to offset the building's use completely, and we'd become net zero.
John Spector, here's a few other things on economic impact of losing a school in terms of tax impacts. There from other precedents. Let's see. I did want to show you a couple of pictures of the school and also talk about some of the sustainability principles, since this is the sustainable Woodstock. I would argue that this project is critical for the sustainability of this community and of our 7 towns. We've seen what happens when the year-round population doesn't have the services that they need and they go elsewhere, and then we become just a tourist destination or a retiree, and nice place to retire. Here we go. Other questions? There's something about second homeowners there. I'm not looking. What was the third? Real estate tax, wealth tax, Laura. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that. Carrie.
Sorry, what was the question? I'm trying to see which one you're talking about in the chat.
She was talking about the wealth tax. You heard about the wealth tax?
Yes, I have a senator friend, Martine Gulick, who actually taught in Woodstock Union with me many years ago. And she told me that there was an effort that she was putting through a bill to tax modestly higher second homeowners. And actually, the fellow I was with today indicated that that is likely, although it would take 2 years before they can probably get it done. And another senator, Tanya Vi Husky, was putting in a wealth tax.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is a complex process. The reason that we haven't taxed second homeowners more is because there's a homestead classification and there's a non-homestead classification. And until last year, it says Google Chrome is going to close. Until last year, so I'm going to lose my slides. In the non-homestead, it was a second home, a rental property, a business, a parking lot, whatever. And so now they've actually created different classifications for all of those so that they can tax at different rates. And so that was something that the legislature took care of in Act 73, and it now makes it possible to issue different tax rates. And we've seen, look, when the House Ways and Means Committee and House Education Committee came to Woodstock last August, I talked to them about this, and they were interested in it then. They were just worried about the implementation because it requires reassessing all the properties in a different way. Here we have a couple of pictures to show, and really we're not trying to sell anybody anything. We just think after looking at this problem extensively over the last 6 months and reviewing everything that the school boards have done over the last 7 years, with the opportunity to fund only 75 to pay for only 75% of the project, we felt like this was really the best way to address all of our things and be sustainable. This is what the new campus would look like. All of this is designed within the Act 250 permit and out of the floodplain. I was saying that in the building plan, the current building, this new building would be built where the football field is now. So it would be sandwiched next to the Union Arena. And then the new athletics fields would be where the existing building are. During the changeover, the athletics would take place for the field in Pomfret. And there would be some busing. They looked at design materials just to make sure that they were keeping in line with local architecture so that it was more consistent. And, I heard some people say, this is too fancy. And I think we've used modest materials with this. You can see the flat roofs, the reduction windows, how this fits in with the campus, the flattening of instead of having a circular, which was a more expensive facade, kind of squaring, making it flat. In terms of our design principles, decisions were value based. We were trying to balance cost against long-term operating and energy costs to make sure we had the most efficient building possible, but also wasn't too expensive for voters. And it has the phased approach we mentioned. So these are a couple of the other additional renderings, and this looks very consistent with any new school. And this is how it fits from the back. So just to give you a better sense of and these are all on the website, should you want to look. Any other questions? We're coming up at the hour. This is, do you want to talk about the solar panels, Joe?
Yeah, there will be solar panels. Again, on the flat roof, we'll be using solar panels again to offset the geothermal and the heat pumps. And we'll be also looking for additional solar array off campus. We don't have enough room, and due to Act 250, we're unable to set up any more solar arrays in the floodplain. So we've been engaging with some local landowners looking to establish an additional solar array to offset, again, the electric needed for the building.
And then just a couple more points on sustainability. Look, here are a few points. Number one, the overarching principle for us was environmentally responsible and cost efficient. We heard it very much from voters since 2024, cost efficiency. Number two, it adheres to permit and code requirements like Act 250 for site drainage and river corridor constraints, which are climate focused. We meet the required footprint limitations for these and the requirements around floodplain. It's designed to be as energy efficient as possible. We have high performance systems with a highly insulated building. It minimizes exterior surfaces to conserve heating and cooling, while the minimal footprint it maximizes green space. It's solar oriented to enhance the daylighting of classrooms. It's electric, which makes it's certainly not net zero, but we have the ability, if we can raise enough private money or find grants to maybe get there one day, and find land partners. So we have that possibility in the future. The building has a zero carbon footprint, so we're not, there's a hybrid geothermal system. So that was the most efficient in terms of like minimizing upfront costs while maximizing operating efficiencies and cost. And then, we've designed it to be low maintenance and durable, inside and out. So just wanted to touch on a few sustainability components that were considered in the design.
Can you all clarify too with the geothermal, if it's both heating and cooling?
Yes, it'll be both heating and cooling.
Great. So we can take more questions. We'll take them in the chat. If you're not seeing the chat screen on the side of the screen here, you can click on the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And I also made it so that everyone can turn their video on. So if you're having trouble with the chat, you can wave your hands or click the raise hand button.
And I do see a comment here. Do you know if the other bills you referenced in terms of cost per square foot were designed with similar environmental considerations?
I would assume I don't know is the answer. So I'm not going to guess. I just know that I got the cost per square foot to be able to provide some comparisons. I don't know. I can find out more detail if we have some time, but I'm not totally sure. I'll put the list in the memo in the chat here.
Great, thank you. So Carrie added, if questions come up after this presentation or you'd like to meet in person, please reach out. Our emails are on the school board website under the board tab, as well as the website for the new build, including facts. We thank you all for attending tonight. Thank you, Carrie.
I saw you have quite a list of upcoming engagements. So maybe where can people go to find that list?
Yeah. Where did the share button go? Man.
We're not on the listservs today, but we can keep putting it out so that, and we may add some more. There is a tour coming up on the 14th, Valentine's Day, to see the school if you haven't been in there yet. And there's another one on the 17th. So if you're not sure what we're talking about with the problems in the school, it would be a good opportunity to see for yourself.
Yeah, and I just put this up on the screen, and I put the link to the website there. I also want to just share this. I think this was a question around the cost per square foot. These were some of the I put in my memo back in January to the group, so you can see some of these other costs per square foot in these, buildings. Okay. Any last questions? I mean, look, for me, I don't want to pay more in taxes. I want to have a school. This felt like the only way to do it from my point of view, in a responsible way that helps us work with the state. I can't stress enough that if we don't take care of our own facility, and this seems like the best option based on 7 years of work, then we may have to drive. And I don't want to drive to Hartford or further. And our folks in Killington, the folks there, I was doing an info session 2 weeks ago up there, and some of the folks for Killington were saying, "Look, we're going to be part of this district. We don't want to have to drive all the way to Hartford." She was talking about her kid with hockey equipment who's not even allowed on the bus because of the hockey equipment. But it's still, we're very sensitive to the affordability issue, but we also know that taxes are pretty inevitable here in Vermont, and education funding is set up to be equalized. And so we don't expect to not have to pay for a school no matter what happens.
And I think we have to remember that we've just gotten through Act 46, making us an official school district from being a supervisory union. And we already worked with our 7 towns. The 7 towns into our high school, middle school have been doing that for decades. And it was a hard struggle. So, to think ahead of the next steps here, we want our 7 towns and Pittsfield as well, who's mostly a town with us, but they have choice. Most of the kids choose to come to Woodstock Union. We want to keep our district together. We are working well with our partners, and the schools are thriving. And if you don't believe that, I'd be happy to send you any kinds of uh, evidence that you want that we see as a school board monthly. So, the best thing we can do really is to try to keep a school in our district. And we understand the affordability problem. I'm on a fixed income myself now as a retiree. And yet I strongly stand behind this school to, keep what we've got going and make it better and get it even better. So thank you for everyone who has come tonight and listened. There's quite a lot of you. And think about your thoughts, and if you have further questions, honestly, just reach out.
Yeah, same here. Folks have any specific questions as far as the building infrastructure, what we're encountering now, or the new build, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, Betsy.
Yes. Is there additional information on your website about the expansion plans? I'm just curious about whether there's been consideration about if and when they're executed, how they'd be funded, just more about that. Should we need this ability to expand?
What I can say is we have the capability to expand, number one. In terms of, we would only expand if we had the student demand, either from growth, natural growth, or redistricting, where we were mandated to have more students or more students were mandated to come here, which is very much a possibility. And so we only wanted to spend what we needed to today, but have the option to expand in the future. And in terms of costs, those are not significant, compared to this initial cost, and those would be funded theoretically by more districts or by more towns who would be participating with the district. So that could bring the cost down even further.
Great. Any last questions? Well, thank you so much, Seth and Carrie and Joe. It's been great having you guys on with us. And I'll be sending out a recording and the links that we have in the chat. So if any of you missed the beginning of our talk, you can look for that tomorrow.
Thank you to Sustainable Woodstock for hosting this and for existing and all the good work you're doing.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. You rallied a lot of people to come to this.
Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.